There is a mechanism for an essential part of our life that a tremendous amount of people throughout our world have. This device has brought comfort. It has helped people in trouble. It's provide answers for parents. It has even raised money, some to the point of millions of dollars, and it's even saved lives. You know what this mechanism is? You're right. It's a cell phone. And I would venture to say that most people have one in this room, and maybe some are even using them as I speak. But this tool, this device, is one that saved John Stockton's life. John was a young adult from Arizona and wanted to take a vacation. So he decided to go to the islands of Hawaii, a great place to have a vacation, and he purchased one of those ocean-going kayaks, those really fancy ones, and he decided to take his way. He started with the Big Island, and he just started kind of kayaking his way down the coast, and camping when he wanted to, and just enjoying the scenes. And as he rounded one particular bend of the island, he noticed that there was a storm coming. Instead of turning away from it, he decided, well, I can handle this. And he started paddling out, and all of a sudden the storm just came on with great ferocity and just swept him out to sea. And he started paddling in and got a little ways, and then it swept him out even farther. And he started paddling. He paddled all the way through the night. And in the morning, he exhausted. He woke up, and he was somewhere 80 miles from the islands. He was a believer, and he prayed and crying out. He thought for sure he was just going to die out there, and he remembered, I have a cell phone. So he unwrapped it out of the Ziploc bag and turned it on, and lo and behold, it had a flickering 1 bar. So he called 911. Help. He thought he was 40 miles, and he really was 80. The phone kept going in and out, and the 911 operator kept trying to call him back, and it was difficult. But sooner or later, he was rescued. That's actually him being rescued in there. And amazing that he was found. Had he not called, he would have not been found. Now, there are other stories that we could come up with, even some from Haiti, where people were trapped and called out for help, seeking desperately to make a connection, to make a contact. You see, communication is essential for life. Like when we find ourselves in trouble, and even when we paddle into trouble, we find ourselves trapped, or to help other people, or to build and to thrive in relationships, communication is vital. And we've been talking a lot about communication with God, and we talked about how it's a lot like playing catch. Can we play catch a little bit? I throw the ball, and he catches it. He throws it back, and I catch it, and pretty soon we're just having a great time just playing catch. But sometimes, I can throw something to God, and he can throw it back, and I just let it go. And see, that's not playing catch at all, and that's why listening is so important. Because not only in this thing of our connection, our communication with God, does it involve all of our life, every area, every room of our life, but it also involves us praising God, calling out in glorious magnification of who he is, proclaiming his majesty. But also in times when we find ourselves in trouble, we call up to God, help, I need help. And sometimes it feels like he's not there, but he is there, and he says to call out. And we should also listen, because that's part of the communication, and we talked about that last week. But there is a time when we need to connect with God, and that's when we find ourselves having rode ourselves into difficulty. Because life is not just playing catch with God. Storms hit our lives, and we cry out and help. But what about the storms we create, or the storms that we row into? The actions, the thoughts, the reactions, the activities that we can get involved in that lead to catastrophic destruction in our lives. A lot like Dave. That's David of the Bible. If you have your outline with you, pull it out and write down there 2 Samuel chapter 11 and 12. It talks of a particular time when David stepped into some things he shouldn't have stepped into. He paddled himself into a storm. The particular story goes something like this. David, King David, who magnificent, wonderful, godly man. Most of his story you found in 1 Samuel and 2 Samuel. You read about how him and God were tight. David's called a friend of God. And then we not only hear of his history in the Bible, but we hear of David's heart as we read the Psalms. Because in the Psalms, we capture how much David loves God and how much he understands that, and him crying out to God and that. But in this particular story, David has become king of all of Israel, the place where God had anointed him to be. And though at this particular time he should have been out securing the borders of the city, he found himself kind of lazy, kicking it back in his kingdom. And he's walking on the roof of the kingdom just to kind of clear his thoughts. And his kingdom his palace is higher than anywhere else in there, so he can look down and see in everybody's backyard. And there in one particular backyard, he goes, "Ooh, who's there's somebody? Whoa, they don't have any clothes on." And David, which he should have done, is he should have looked away, because modesty in that culture, and really in most other cultures in the world, is not what you're doing or what you're wearing. It's whether you're not looking. And David should have done what Job said, made a covenant with his eyes not to look. But David was tempted, and he gave in to that temptation and looked, and that look turned into lust, and that lust turned into want. And the king, who could do anything, the power of his position took over, and he said, "I want that woman." He sent his servants around and came and took her, a married woman. Well, she became pregnant. And so David, instead of repenting of the sin at that point, decided to make it worse, and he had her husband murdered. Finally, Nathan the prophet came and challenged him with his sin, but he had lied and he had cheated. Sin is any action outside of God's rules and way of life. God doesn't have a whole lot of rules, but they're there for a purpose. Just like you have a car, and the car has certain things you need to do with it, and it has rules. Like, for instance, you put gas in the gas tank, not ketchup. Now, ketchup tastes really good, and I like ketchup. I like ketchup on pretty much anything. One time I even put it on ice cream, vanilla ice cream ketchup. Hey, don't knock it until you try it. You know, I just love ketchup, and because I love ketchup so much, it's got to be good for the gas tank, right? I mean, come on, who cares about the rules? What do they know? This car can run on ketchup because I think it should run on ketchup. And see, that's how we deal with sin. We think that, God has these rules set up, these guidelines, these purposes, these plans for us, because he made us, he made the universe, he put it all together, he knows how it works. And he said, don't do these certain things because they will mess you up. And we say, wow, how could something that feels so good be so wrong? Ketchup, I love ketchup. It's got to be good for the car. And yet it's not so. But God has rules there. And yet it's so tempting when those things that we shouldn't do are out there, when we want to reach out and we want to grab them. It's kind of like jumping out of an airplane without a parachute. May feel good for the first few seconds, but it always ends badly. See, sin traps you. It chokes the life out of you. It holds you back from the life that God desires and has designed you for. And there are many times that we paddle our way right into huge storms. But there is a way to be rescued, a way to call God that we can be delivered and restored and cleansed and cured from the lingering effects of sin.